Okay, so let's dive into this set of sources you've brought us. We've got articles, notes, all kind of circling around Somkiat Saelek, his podcast, and these links to The Artist's Way.
Exactly. And the goal here really is to sort of unpack what these sources were telling us. We want to pull out those key bits about creativity, about identity, and maybe the tools people actually use, to keep their creative lives going.
Right. So who is this Somkiat Saelek based on the materials?
Well, the sources paint him as a professional photographer and videographer. He's based up in London, Ontario.
Okay. Yeah, they get specific to websites like somkiat.ca and www.clickgstudio.ca, even contact info, like his email.
Right, somkiat.se@gmail.com. It grounds him, like you said, as someone actually doing creative work out there.
And then there's the podcast angle, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, Somkiat's podcast. The sources say it explores creativity, culture, and community. Seems like a good mix.
They even mention an episode title, Cities of the Soul, creating between Canada, Bangkok, and New York.
Which sounds fascinating, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That alone hints at, identity and place being woven into the creative stuff, bridging cultures.
Definitely. But as we were looking through the sources, one thing kind of jumped out, a mention of his episode 10.
Ah, yes. Somkiat's podcast EP, 10 Artists' Way, 10 episodes, 10 lessons.
But the catch is the sources also note that this specific episode, it's listed as not available online right now.
Exactly. So it points to this direct link he made or intended to make between his podcast and Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way.
Which is, a huge book for people looking into creative recovery.
Absolutely seminal. Makes you wonder what those 10 lessons he planned to discuss were, right? Since we can't actually access it, according to these notes.
Yeah, and this connection to The Artist's Way isn't just a one-off mention in the sources either.
No, they bring up other related resources, too. Things like the Artist's Way podcast weekly check-in and some study group materials from Rob Schofield.
So there's like a whole world of discussion around this book.
Yeah. Definitely an ecosystem. And it's in those related materials that the sources get specific about themes from week 10 of The Artist's Way.
Okay, week 10. What themes are highlighted there?
That week often focuses on recovering a sense of self-protection. And the sources link this to talking about challenges like, anxiety.
Anxiety, yeah.
And how important self-awareness is when you're trying to navigate the whole creative process, the ups and downs.
So if we pull all these threads together from the sources, Somkiat's work, the podcast mention, that specific link to The Artist's Way, especially those week 10 themes, what's the core idea emerging here?
It really seems to be about how the outward creative work, the photography, the podcasting, is deeply tied to the inner journey.
Right, like the practical craft isn't separate from the personal stuff.
Exactly. The sources suggest that for someone creating actively, the hurdles aren't just, technical. They're also about managing vulnerability, dealing with anxiety, consciously protecting your creative self.
Which lines up directly with those themes of self-protection and awareness from The Artist's Way resources mentioned.
Precisely. It connects the dots between his creative practice and these broader concepts of creative recovery.
Okay, so wrapping this deep dive up, the key takeaways from digging into these sources seem to be, we have Somkiat Saelek, a creative pro using different mediums, photo, video, podcast, to explore creativity itself.
Right, and his work intersects, or was planned to intersect, with the ideas in The Artist's Way.
And crucially, these related sources really emphasize themes like protecting yourself creatively, managing anxiety, making those integral parts of the whole process, not just side issues.
Yeah, which leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought to maybe chew on. Creating is inherently vulnerable, right? So given that, how vital is it for creatives to actively build ways to protect themselves, to cultivate that self-awareness, perhaps, just as vital as honing the craft itself?